we've done CPACs overseas for a number of years now. And the one thing that we do see is how the radical left wants to destroy freedom in every part of the globe. So today we've got two special guests with us, Tara Oh, who's the president of the East Asia Research Center, and Tara is one of our fan favorites at CPAC. She's been with us the last couple of years at CPAC. And we also have Grant Newsham, who is a senior research fellow with the Center for Security Policy. Many of you recognize Center for Security Policy. They too have been at CPAC for a number of years. Fred Fleitz is the president of it. And so Grant, I also have a warm spot in my heart because you're a former Marine Corps officer. My dad fought in Korea early on after World War II and was shot numerous times defending freedom both for Korea and for America. And Tara, many Americans don't really understand how important, how critical South Korea is as our ally and how important Korea is for freedom around the world. Tara Oh, would you please explain, just give us a broad overview, what is the importance of South Korea?
I'd like to point out two things. One is geopolitics and geolocation of where South Korea is. Of course, we have this big country called China on the mainland, and we have Japan on that side. This is where sort of the boundary between freedom, the free world, and not so free world is. And South Korea is, it's on the mainland, but it's where the freedom frontier is. We know North Korea definitely is not is on the other side, not on freedom. So it's important that we have the strong ally, South Korea, right on that border with China, which has this ambitions to dominate the world under its own system. So that is one. And the other is that in 1950 to 53, there was a Korean War. And during that time, the United States, along with other countries under the UN command, helped keep South Korea free through blood. So this is somewhere where we really sacrificed. And after that, South Korea, which was war-torn, had only about $60 per person GDP at that time, has grown to be one of the strongest countries in the world in terms of economics and also democracy, liberal democracy. So it would be a huge loss if we lose that kind of our success in democracy and freedom for the people.
Right. Korea is really an amazing success story. Its economic turnaround has been spectacular. I don't know that any country has progressed so quickly economically. And the people of South Korea prospered in terms of their political freedom as well. In the last 20 years, just extraordinary growth. Yet, the current Moon regime, and President Moon looks like a sophisticated Westerner. He wears fancy suits and looks sharp, but his alliance seems to be more with North Korea and China than with America. Grant Newsham, you've just spent almost a month investigating the April elections in Korea to see if, in fact, there were stolen elections. Which, what are your findings? Because your findings could be very important to the future of freedom around the world.
My findings, after looking into it and talking to a lot of people and just trying to examine the evidence like a lawyer would, is that I think there is a pretty good chance the election was rigged. And I do see it as an effort as one step in moving South Korea to a one-party state, as you noted, aligned with North Korea and even more aligned with China at the expense of the United States.
Wow. Tara, if I'm sitting here conceptualizing South Korea almost like the old Berlin Wall, a wall, the Iron Curtain, where South Korea and Japan and America are on one side promoting freedom, and on the other side are the evil forces of communism and totalitarianism. And it sounds like the wall is being moved, that South Korea could be absorbed into the radical left. What is the significance if this progresses?
It would be bad because we would be it would give a huge victory for China. For China, I mean, South Korea is a big. I don't want to say it's a like a prize, but it would be a major victory, especially because they're trying so hard to take over Hong Kong. And there's a lot of negative publicity and resistance towards that. But in South Korea, there's hardly any resistance because a lot of people just don't know that that is in progress. And so that is very dangerous, but it also increases chances that South Korea could turn towards North Korea. Now, having said that, of course, the government, Moon Jae-in government is doing that, but the people they don't want to be a vassal state of China. So this is a very serious matter.
Right. Well, so one of the things that South Korea is known for is technology. And that's where China's starting to really dominate. Americans just in the last year or two have really learned the name Huawei and Tencent and now TikTok. Grant, how are these giant social media companies and tech companies in China used both for our elections or for the Korean elections? And what can we then learn about the threat that these giant tech companies in China pose to freedom around the world?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of attention paid recently to the threat which these tech companies pose to the United States, to our allies, and really throughout the world. And so that's become much clearer than it ever was. And there's evidence in Korea that is part of the election that they were involved in capitalizing on the vulnerabilities of some of the electoral hardware, the electronic ballot machines. For example. So the technology in the case of the Korean election might have been one of the tools that was used to shift the vote in ways that were just statistically and naturally improbable.
I read the report by the renowned University of Michigan researcher, professor, who looked at the numbers. He's not an Asian specialist, doesn't know Korea, but he's a statistician and he knows elections. And he wrote one of these very sophisticated, peer-reviewed journal kind of pieces, showing statistically that that these anomalies were so significant you can't explain them by any means other than intentional fraud. Grant, Tara, are you familiar with this study and what can you explain a little bit better what this study means?
So quickly, I did watch the Professor Mabane study. He used a forensics statistical model that he developed, and he used the data from the National Election Commission. And he ran it about 6 times, each time adding even more data to make it more robust. But each time it showed that election fraud has occurred. He defines fraud in a different way. But one thing that I was really surprised by was that there were more than 1 million votes that were manufactured and over 360,000 votes that were stolen from other candidates.
It was a shocking study. And what is so disturbing to me is that some of the same Chinese companies that were involved in that are here in the US too. And we've got our own election in less than 2 months. We certainly know that foreign governments are always trying to disrupt the way of life in America, and they've been involved in trying to disrupt elections for decades. But this time it seems like their efforts are more focused and more determined to cause mayhem in America, even just to cause doubt in America. That could really be a disaster in 2 months' time if Americans do not have confidence in how this election comes out. I know that both of you are Asia experts, but do you have comments on what the future of America looks like with all of this controversy?
Well, I think in terms of pre-votes and electronic use of the electronic machine for vote counting is very dangerous because when frauds occur using that kind of methodology, it's not observable to human eyes. Some are, but you have to be extremely vigilant, but most of them are not. because it just happens over wires, in ones and zeros. So in order to make the process transparent, when electronic system is involved, you have to take inordinate amount of measures, which I don't think that has been done. So really, the best way, really the most transparent way, is to go back to analog, the old-fashioned way. But if we are using electronic means, we have to insert some sort of test to see whether the outcome is valid. So, but I don't think we are there yet, and that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I would say that first you really have to, one, believe it's possible. And it's funny that we're told throughout our daily lives to be aware of cyber theft and cyber intrusions, to have our virus software updated, have firewalls. And yet when it comes to elections being rigged, we somehow think, well, that couldn't happen for whatever reason. But you have to be aware of it as a possibility and take it as just a mortal threat. And as Tara said, you have to do that, but also the simpler the better. There's a sense that, well, the convenience of electronic voting is better, but the paper works good, and it makes it much harder to tamper with. And in the Korean case, you have basically a national election. You don't have these local bodies that run it. So it was actually, looking at it from an offensive standpoint, is actually a fairly simple thing to pull off, where you have access, you have the hardware, you have the technical know-how, and if you have some local cooperation, it's easy. But America has got to take this threat seriously, and I'm not entirely sure that we do.
Yeah. So Grant, you served in the Marine Corps, the U.S. Marine Corps, for a long time. You retired from the Marine Corps. You know what our enemies are capable of and what our enemies' intentions are. Are we already involved in a war with the People's Republic of China, with the Chinese Communist Party, and it's just warfare of a different form?
Yes, if you ask them, they'll tell you that. We've just gone out of our way for decades to admit it's not. But the Chinese have been very clear about what they're up to, what they intend to do. We just need to take them seriously, and that's an advantage for us. It really has just taken an administration to finally wake up and actually stand up for American interests. And it is about that simple. I hope we can keep it going.
If I can add regarding China and technology, so South Korea, Samsung, we all know Samsung, they produce wonderful products. They also lead when it comes to 5G technology patents in the world. They have the most. And it has all kinds of cutting edge technology. And currently, South Korean government has been investigating Samsung nonstop. From one agency to tax agency to all kinds of different places in order to harass. And right now, they are looking at putting Lee Jae-yong, who is the vice chairman of Samsung, in jail again. And they're doing this to press them. Now, this is what they have done in the past. You may have heard of the OLED technology for TV, that they basically, the ruling party made that information that came out of the court that was supposed to be secret and kept not public. They publicized it. They made it public. Basically, they gave that away free to China because Chinese companies start producing that several months later. And this is something that looks like not only are they trying to sort of take over Samsung, but they really appear to want to give all this advanced technology to China. And that is problematic because China really needs, for example, for Huawei 5G, it needs certain components from Samsung and other countries. And we, United States, have placed sanctions so that Samsung or other companies cannot sell those chips to Huawei. But if China somehow becomes owner of Samsung, then they can just take the technology. So again, it's yet another danger that I like to point out.
Right. President Moon of South Korea is a radical. He is not our friend. He is a radical leftist. He is using the power of his police state to attack private enterprise, to attack private property, to attack the rights of the South Koreans to run their own government. This is a terrifying thing. Yet Americans still need to wake up to this threat, this danger. Grant, you've got one last question or comment?
Yeah, it's a comment. And one thing that I noticed when I was in Korea was, and I'd noticed it even before, but I really got a closer sense of it, is the extent to which opposition to the Moon administration is being pressured. They have libel suits brought against them. They're being charged with interfering with the electoral process. And it reminds you very much of, say, Venezuela when Hugo Chavez took over, or Erdogan in Turkey. It is the degree to which the people who are speaking up are they're trying to silence them. And he's effectively taking his stiletto to free speech in Korea, and the foreign media doesn't seem to care much. Instead, they write stories about K-pop boy bands. But this is as serious as you can imagine. And I would note just how people in Korea who are speaking up about this are. This is like taking on old Richard Daley's machine in Chicago, but probably a bit worse, I should think.
Well, Grant, Tara, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to close with the same way I opened. The radical left throughout the world is hell-bent on destroying freedom. They do not like when people can govern themselves. They do not like when people can choose what to do with their own property. They do not like when people can choose whether to go to church, to mass, to synagogue, to a temple. The radical left wants to destroy freedom, not only in the US, but around the world. We have to stick with our allies and our friends all across the globe, because to win, for freedom to win out, we have to know who our friends are and to fight with our friends against our enemies. Thank you so much for another edition of CPAC Live. Stay strong, stay healthy, and stay free.